Hi everyone, it's Kai. Welcome back to the channel, and this week I have for you here a Chinese New Year inspired design. It is going to be the Year of the Snake. Chinese New Year is on the 29th, and I'd recently gotten these really pretty fan charms that I wanted to use, and I thought, what perfect timing to get some use out of them. So yes, this is my take on Chinese New Year's. If you like nail art tutorials and nail hauls, product reviews, and that sort of thing, please consider subscribing. If you are already subscribed, thank you so much for being here, and let's get into the tutorial. Alright, so here's the design that I came up with for this set. This is actually just a template I made on Canva. I will have the link down below in the description if you want to use it. But I've been trying to draw out more of my designs lately so that I have kind of a starting point for when I go in to make the nails. So here is my plan. The thumb finger and the middle finger are going to be like a sparkly cat eye gel. The pinky and the pointer finger will just be like a white base, a milky base, and then a marbled effect on the pointer. The ring finger will be an ombre, and then these little scratch marks are meant to be like some silver chrome paint strokes. And of course, the standout of this set is going to be this fan charm here that I got recently. For other inspiration, I have some paintings of bamboo, this one and this one. Just some various Chinese New Year related symbols. This one here is actually the Mandarin symbol for good fortune that's often on like the red envelopes that are given out for Chinese New Year. And then these here are inspiration pictures for the overall aesthetic that I'm going for. These are from Claws by Julie on Instagram. She is an absolutely amazing nail tech. She does the most gorgeous gel nails that I have seen. I really love her like classy, refined style, and so that's kind of what I was going for with this look. Here are some of the products that I will be using: the Doughy Nudie Jade, the Doughy Nudie White, and then this Vala Green from the Noble Night collection. Those are kind of like the base products for the colors. And then I have the silver chrome here that I'll be using for that ring finger. And then up here, I keep a list of all of the potential products I'll be using so that I'm more organized when I go to actually paint the nails. So yeah, I'm liking having a concept board to work off recently. We'll see at the end how close these end up being to my original design. So I did use quite a few products for this video, but you can always substitute them with something similar that you already have. First, I did use 2 polygels, one white and one clear. These are just from McCart. And then you need a good painting gel in white, black, and red. These are the ones from D-Gel. They're some of my favorites. This is the Ivy Fix Gel. The tube or the jar version, whichever one you have, works. You do need a blooming gel. I actually only have the Beetles blooming gel. It's very thick. If you have a recommended blooming gel, let me know, because that's kind of the only one I've used. And then I show this here, it's the Izemi resin top, but I don't actually end up using it. However, it is just a wipe top coat that is supposed to be really nice and clear. And then this is the Vala Noble Night, number 23. It is a gorgeous, like, jadey green color that I thought would be perfect for this set. And my Doughy Nudie White is one of my favorite milky white polishes. I just needed a base for the hand-painted art on a few of the nails. And then this is the Yogurt Gel Korea Syrup 19. I barely use this, just for some of the hand-painted art, but originally I thought it could be a good base color as well. This is the Divock Vanta White, which is one of my favorite opaque cream white polishes. It's just super thick and could double honestly as a painting gel. And then the actual green base color that I ended up using is the Doughy Nudie Jade. This one is just like a super, super light, almost like a barely there green. For top coat, I used the Yogo Zombie top for a thick one and the Mayo Glass top for a thinner consistency top coat over some of the details. And then for the tips, I am using the Natural Stiletto Long from SProR. And then for some of the 3D elements, I will be using the Yogo Milk Jam and the 3D Clear Sculpting Gel. I do really like these clays for rounded shapes, but I think for this design specifically with the snake where you have to handle the clay a lot, I would maybe recommend one that is a little thicker and maybe not quite as quickly self-leveling. And then for some of the painted details, I am using my MPA art palette. I love this thing. I absolutely adore the variety of colors that it contains. It's just super handy to have them all pre-mixed like this. I mentioned it before, I think D-gel is slightly more pigmented, but you also do end up mixing your colors more, so there are trade-offs for both. And then the rest is sort of like accessories. This is just a standard pearl powder. Here are some of the charms that I will be using for this design. I'll try to remember to link everything below. Some of the things from AliExpress may not be available anymore, but if they are, again, I'll try to link it below. Here are those fans I was talking about that served as the major inspiration for this design. This also I've been dying to use. It's a 3D nail mold. I got this probably back in like July and I haven't touched it since. Then I also needed some chains, so I am using my Nail Bio silver chains from the 12 set collection. And then the only specific tool you need is something with this texture here. This is just a Macart pusher, a cuticle pusher, but you need something with that texture. And then for brushes, I'm using my ombre brush from Nail Bio, and then 3 from Diami. So we have the Leaf Cute number 12, the long liner, and the short liner. These I use for all of the various hand painted details. I also did use the Sweetie Nail Supply long liner brush. It's just ever so slightly thicker than the Diami ones, which actually you do want a thicker tip for certain art styles if you're going for like a painter's stroke look, which is what I was doing for some of the nails. And then I needed a flat brush for blending and sculpting, and so this is the Doughy flat square brush. It's actually number 4 from the new nail brush collection from Nail Bio. But that is everything, so let's get on into the actual tutorial. Alright, so starting with tip prep, I thought it would be the perfect time to do a little mini review for you. Melody Susie sent over their cordless dust collector. I do have the non-cordless version of this that you have to keep plugged in. It doesn't charge on its own. And I find it super portable and powerful, especially for the size. It's something that I pull out if I'm doing just like a little bit of filing and I know I'm not making a huge mess. I forgot to double check the wattage, but I'm pretty sure it's just the same cord you would use to charge your regular Melody Susie dust collector if you have one, but with the added convenience of being able to unplug it and take it on the go. It has 3 fan settings, which you can hear in the background as I shift between the different settings. I will say that it's definitely not a quiet machine. It's also relatively cheap for the power, I think. So there's a trade-off to be made there. It's quite loud. But I wanted to test it out, and so I put on a little disposable filter, and then I brought out the chalk. If you saw my last dust collector review, I used bright blue chalk, and it was the worst idea because I was reviewing a dust collector that had a water reservoir instead of disposable filters. And it stained the inside, so that's fun. This time I learned and I'm using the filter, and you should be able to see here I tilted the dust collector up on its side a bit so that you could see that even if I'm filing not directly over the filter, it does still a really good job of collecting those particles, and I can flip the whole machine to the side and none of those particles will go anywhere. So yeah, big fan of this dust collector. I'm excited to have a cordless one finally. It's going to be so handy. And this is Kai from the future because as I was editing this, I realized I forgot to show you how the filter works. The top is just magnetized on. You can just easily lift it off. And then the filter itself is a reusable filter, or it's supposed to be. It's really sturdy, so all you do is you just shake it off into the trash or wherever you're disposing of your dust, and then you put it right back in. I do believe they sell these filters on their website, but they're supposed to last a pretty long time. I do have a code with them if you would like to save 12% and support me, but they've never paid me to say anything about the product. It was gifted though, so thank you again to Melody Susie for sending it over. So now that I have it out, I am going to just be prepping my tips. I've already sized them, and I'm just taking down that little uneven notch that comes at the end of the apres tips. You don't have to do this necessarily for every brand, but depending on the production and how they're finished, sometimes they just have a little bit of extra plastic on the free edge that you just have to file off and shape. And it's these sort of like small things that I think this dust collector is perfect for. The filter inside is reusable, so you should be able to like shake it off and use it again. I personally, since I file so little, it generally doesn't need cleaned out or replaced every couple months like suggested, but I do believe they sell replacement filters on the website too. And now that our tips are ready to go, it's time to put on my gloves. I personally do recommend wearing gloves whenever possible when handling gel products, just because there is risk for a potential gel allergy due to contact with uncured gel at a repeated rate. But I always encourage you all to do your own research on the matter. I have all of the tips attached to their stands, and I will be using the Apres primer to etch the surface. This primer does have HEMA, so it's only meant to be used on the nail tip itself and not on your natural nails. But I like the really short brush on it, so I often use it instead of filing down the surface of the nails, just because for me personally it's easier. So I really scrub that in, and then I go right on top of it with the magnetic gel for the thumb finger. I really strongly considered getting the whole Vala Noble Night collection. It's a really gorgeous set of like shimmery cat eyes, and I don't have a ton of the shimmery kind. I have a lot of glittery ones, and this set has like tiny little specks of, it looks like duo shift glitters in it, something like that. You can see them kind of shining here and like a blue peachy tone. It is super, super pretty. I did end up getting just this one to try out, and honestly, it does have me convinced that I might want to pick up some more, but we'll see. I'm currently on a no-buy and trying to really stick to that through February. But this magnetic gel is honestly just so easy to magnetize. Look how quickly those particles are pulled toward the the round magnet. Now, that did mean that I had a little bit of trouble getting the normal velvet look that I usually do, because again, those pigments moved so quickly. So instead I do kind of like the spotlight method, where I run the magnet around the perimeter of the nail and then kind of like gather everything in the center and then pull it towards the edges with the flat end. And I think it looked pretty good. So I am just repeating these steps on the middle fingernail, going around the whole nail with the round magnet pointing down, and then using the flat end to pull that glitter, that shimmer towards the edges a little bit more. And this was just a stunning shade. I love that it is a nice subtle green, nothing too loud. I am, however, going to be receiving some PR from Sweetie Nail Supply here soon that is more bold colored magnetic gels. So if you guys want to let me know down in the comments below what sorts of looks you might like to see. I was thinking like a Valentine's strawberry shortcake set. I thought that would be really cute with like a glittery effect to it. But yeah, let me know. For almost all of the other nails, I'm just using the Doughy Nudie White as a base color. So I'm laying down a few layers on the pointer finger and the pinky finger, and then for the ring finger, I will be doing an ombre between this one and the Doughy Nudie Jade. While this footage is running, I just wanted to thank everybody who left feedback on my last video in terms of kind of like the new video style I'm going for, where the footage is a little bit slower, and so I'm not including like 100% of the footage, mostly just the moments that I think show you what I've done during that step, but at a speed that is hopefully easier to follow. So yeah, let me know if you like the style. So for the pointer finger, I wanted to do like a marbled effect. I'm using that blooming gel here to cover the entire surface, not curing it before adding in the Doughy Nudie Jade and some of the Divock Vanta White. Honestly, I have used just a base gel for a blooming gel before. I think it works pretty well. If you have a thicker base gel, you just lay it down over the entire nail, add the colors that you want to marble into it, and then just let it sit for a couple minutes. To add the white, I didn't want it too concentrated, so I'm using that Nail Bio Ombre brush and just layering on some very small patches, some thin streaks, and hope that it will disperse, not super opaque, and just blend out a little bit more. I wanted this marble to be pretty subtle, so I am going back in with some of the green to help disperse more of that white polish. And then I thought, why not just use some of that magnetic green and add a little shimmer too. It also helped add depth. I think I wasn't realizing how light the doughy jade polish was, and so this just also helped add a little bit of contrast. I don't know if you can hear my cat in the background, but he is very upset with me right now. It is currently like 4 in the morning. I don't know how I keep ending up getting to this point, but I keep getting behind on filming my nail sets, which means I finish filming them like Friday evening, and then I have to do all of the editing and all of the voiceover on Saturday. And so yeah, I'm very behind today because it does take me, I hate to say it, like anywhere between 8 to 12 hours to edit something, depending on how much footage I have. I am trying to learn a new software this summer that will hopefully make the process easier, but we'll see. Back to the set, I am just blending together the nudie white and the nudie jade on the ring finger. I started with an ombre brush, but then I realized it was easy enough to just actually blend with the brush of the second color. These colors just go so well together, and the formula is really nice and self-leveling. So you can really easily just use the brush included in the bottle to blend the colors together while they're both still uncured, and you get a pretty seamless finish. Another reason I do wear gloves is I have a handy tool to wipe down the edges. I always try to do this when I am base coloring nails, just to avoid spillage and keeping those edges nice and clean so I don't have to file them later. And to finish off the base colors, the pinky finger gets a few layers of that doughy nudie white. The nudie white is quite sheer so that you can get a really subtle effect if you want, but you can also layer it to get more opacity. If you're looking for one that's a bit more opaque right out of the bottle, I would recommend maybe the Divock Milkis white or even the Yogurt Nail Blossom Ending Collection white. Both are a bit more opaque. And now for the nail art portion, I am using those D-gel paint pots. And I'm just taking some of the gel and putting it on a palette. Whenever you're painting super small details, you want to do this so that you can actually load your brush properly to get the most crisp lines. So you want to make sure your brush is coated and then sort of like wipe off any excess by making lines on the palette itself. You should not see any sort of blob at the end of your brush. If you do see a blob like this, what's going to happen is that your line is going to start as thick as that blob, and you won't get the super fine details you get if you wipe away some of that excess. For really small lines, this is one of my favorite brushes. This is the Dayami long liner brush, and it's just so skinny. I don't know if you can really tell here, but it's barely like maybe 5 bristles wide. I'm not sure. I haven't actually sat down and counted it, but it's super skinny, so you can get really nice thin lines, and you can always thicken them if you want. It's harder to get thin lines than it is to get thick lines. So I'm a big fan of the Dayami liners. Since I wanted full opacity, I went with my D-gel paints today, and with these, I do recommend that you mix them up, as sometimes the color can separate a little bit from the gel compound, and then you might have some curing issues. You also definitely need a high-powered lamp to cure these things because they are so pigmented. You need something with enough power to penetrate through those layers of gel and pigment. I did switch here to the Sweetie Nail Supply Liner 1 brush for some of the details because I actually did want it a bit thicker. I also find that the Dayami long liner is really good for straight edges, but for these really small rounded details, I just wanted something a little bit less flexible actually, to where it would stay kind of stiff and I could use the tip to make those details. Luckily, I only did this hand-tied knot about 3 times. Usually with things like this, I'm too much of a perfectionist and I give it multiple goes, but I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. After curing, I just wipe away any remaining tacky layer, and then I move on to the pinky finger. So on the pinky finger, I had wanted to do some hand-drawn bamboo, so I mixed together a custom color from my MPA art palette. I took this green here, along with a gray color to just make the green a bit more cool toned, a bit closer to the other greens that are in this set. I still think I could have gone a little bit more cool toned with it. I should have added more gray, but that's okay, it was close enough. And then I used that Sweetie Nail Supply Liner 1 brush because it is, again, just a little bit thicker to do the bamboo stalks. Or I guess maybe they're shoots, but I think the shoots are like the young ones, so I'm not sure. Either way, I draw on the pieces of bamboo, and then I go in and add the segmentation to the still wet polish. So I'm just adding a little bit more pigment around where the different segments of the bamboo meet together to create that recognizable bamboo look. And then once I'm happy with how the segments look, I will go ahead and cure it and then paint on like the smaller offshoots, just really thin lines here. And then from the ends of those thin lines, you want to add your leaves. So with this, you actually do want to lump the paint on the end of the brush so that you can get kind of like that leaf shape with the wider base and the thinner tip. Sorry that some of this is out of frame. I did finally figure out a way to hook up my camera to an external, so I can see what I'm doing. It's just that I'm not always paying direct attention to it, but I'm working on getting a little bit better with that. Here I'm just adding a bit more depth. I've already cured the first layer and I'm going in with that same green color and just outlining one side to create almost like a shadow. And now it's time to use the 3D molds. I do eventually want to do like a full breakdown of 3D molds, but for now I attempted to make the first jade ring with the Yogo Milk Jam, the clear, and the Pearl Jam, which is like a pearlescent clear. So I blended them all together and then I pushed that into the mold. I do really like the results, and these gels cure very clear and white. There was no yellowing at all, which is exactly what I was looking for because I was trying to make like a quartz version of a jade disc. So I didn't want any yellowing. I do really like the outcome, however, I did not like that it was that rubbery texture because these gels don't cure 100% hard. The Yogo clays, they have a little bit of give to them still, but it did look really pretty. Although it did leave some gapping around the edges as well, so I moved on to attempt number 2. This is just regular gel polish, so the Izemi top coat that I showed earlier, some chrome powder, and just that doughy milky white. I do like how the swirls turned out, and usually I do use regular polish in these nail molds, and the marbling works perfectly fine. The only problem here was it did yellow quite a bit. That just is something that happens a lot with clear gels, some more than others, and so I resorted to some polygel. I think polygel tends to yellow less, same with like the clays and things like that, because they have something in there that thickens them. I think with polygel, it's kind of like a mix between a gel and acrylic, and then those particles, they don't yellow. It's the clear gel that holds it together that tends to yellow. So I'm back to mixing in some chrome powder just into a little bit of the clear polygel. I give that a good stir till it's well combined, and then I mix all 3 of the polygels together. You want to be very light-handed with this. I only swirl it around a couple times because as you are putting the gel into the mold, it will get mixed up even more. So I take a dollop of the mixture and I just start pressing it into that mold. This is kind of a messy process with polygel, and I would not recommend polygel for more complex shapes with a lot of like grooves and ridges. For those, you really do want to use just like a regular gel that has a thinner viscosity so that you can get it into all those nooks and crannies. But for this simple shape, the polygel worked perfectly fine. I was checking the top to make sure it had no bubbles, and then this helps also flatten things out. I just slam it against the table. I just drop it with some force downwards, and it just helps even things out and smooths out the surface. Once it's full cured, I take it out of the mold, and then I have to file away all of the excess here. I wipe it down with some isopropyl alcohol first, and then I get that dust collector back out and do the filing. Now, if I had been a little bit more careful about actually putting the gel in the mold and cleaned up around the edges like I usually do with regular nail polish, there would be much less to file. At this point, I wasn't even sure if this would work. I had tried so many iterations, and so I wasn't super clean with the application, and therefore I had to file more, but that's okay. It didn't take much time at all. And it also meant that I could show you another tip I have when doing like 3D work and using acrylic charms specifically. You can take a barrel bit like this and you can just hold it in one place on the back of whatever charm you're using and file in a curve. That way the charm actually sits more naturally on the nail and you don't have as much gapping. So here are the 3 attempts. The one in my right hand is the one that I end up using. The next stage is actually applying all of the charms. I will start off with the thumbnail. I need to apply the charm that I made myself, and then also this metallic snake that I thought was perfect for the theme of Chinese New Year since it is the year of the snake. I'm going to be using one of those doughy chains, the nail bio chains, to run it through that jade pendant so it looks like a necklace. I know this look has been trending for quite some time now, and I've always wanted to do a set with this sort of ornament, so I'm glad to finally have the motivation and excuse to do so. I start by placing down the snake. I did bend it just a little bit to fit on the nail better. When it's slanted, it did come curved. There are better snake charms out there, I'll be honest. I got these a long time ago. And once that's flash cured into place, I'm going to decide where I want my pendant, add a little bit of the Ivy Fix gel, and then flash that into place as well. I'm being really careful here to try not to get the glue on the chain itself because I want the chain to be able to move so I can adjust it. I could have probably cut the chain first and then glued it down, but I just felt like I wanted the freedom of measuring out exactly how long it needs to be once everything's glued down. So I was able to go back in and adjust it to the exact length I wanted. I cut the ends with some wire cutters. Strongly recommend if you're going to be working with jewelry, charms, with wire, that you get yourself some wire cutters. I just got them from Michael's, I believe, in a pack in the beading and jewelry section. If you try to use your cuticle nippers, you will definitely dull them, and then they won't be safe to use on your skin anymore because they will be not sharp enough to cut through it, and you'll end up tearing it instead. Now for the ring finger and this huge charm here, I'm actually going to use some of the Yogo 3D clear clay, and I'm just taking a little bit of that, sticking it to the nail, not curing it, adding some of that Ivy Fix gel on top, and it just gives a really nice sturdy base for any sort of huge charm that you don't want moving around too much. Anything really heavy that you don't want wiggling around before you can cure, that's a great way to seal it into place. For the middle finger, I'm attaching a large glass stone. The Ivy Fix gel is enough to hold this one because I'm just going to be placing it right in the middle and then quickly flash curing. I do wish at this point that I had used a different color. I didn't want to distract from the 3D snake that I'm making here out of the Yogo Milk Jam, but in hindsight, it just kind of looks like there's nothing there. So I guess if I were to remake the set, I would use maybe like a black crystal or even a green crystal. I had some greens, they just weren't the right shade, so that's why I didn't use those. But a first design is always going to be a learning experience. Speaking of which, I start here with just a little bit of that Yogo Milk Jam to make the head, and I do like the Yogo Milk Jam. It is just the slightest bit sticky though, so it's really good for like really rounded shapes where you want it to self-level, but it's not quite as stiff as like a clay from Croissant Neri. That's just an entirely different texture. It's more like real clay. This is a little bit more stretchy, more rubbery. And so next time I just use something a little stiffer, but here I am just shaping it with a brush wetted down with some isopropyl alcohol. And then I'm going in with that cuticle tool that I said you needed, something with this texture here, this diamond imprint, because you're going to roll it gently over the shape before curing it. This will give you that snake texture. Once I have the head done, I'm going back in with a longer log for the body. You can see here how much that clay was just kind of moving around on its own because it's not quite as stiff as other ones. So yeah, in the future, I would probably just use something with a little bit more sturdiness to it. Although I will say I do like how it self-levels, how it gives you just that round bouncy texture. Again, great for other applications, maybe just not one where you're handling the clay a lot. Although I have no problem moving it around with that brush with isopropyl alcohol, it's just kind of like the initial placement that is a little bit sticky. And then please forgive the dirtiness of this tool here. I don't know if you can see, but there's some green polish stuck in the grooves because I made an apothecary themed set for Halloween last year, and I'd used some just jelly green gel and painted over the handle to get like some snake skin. I peeled it away, but it did not completely peel away, so now I just have green jelly gel perpetually stuck in my tool, but that's okay, it still works for these purposes. And to finish off the snake, I'm actually going in with the Born Pretty Metal Painting Gel. The stuff is so shiny. You can see here just how reflective it is, but it's also very thin, which is exactly what I needed. I painted it in patches onto the snake, and because of its thin viscosity, it just settled into those grooves really nicely and highlighted that texture I created. Although I think I did need to mix the gel because I noticed it wasn't quite as shiny as it usually is. So I do recommend if you're going to use that product that you give it a good mix before applying it. If I got anywhere that I didn't want on the snake, a little makeup sponge or one of the ombre sponges did a really good job of just cleaning up the area so I could repaint. And that's the snake for now. Back to the thumbnail, I thought it was missing something, so I found these green flowers that I had ordered a long time ago. I think they're supposed to be like roses or camellia flowers. I don't know. They looked like peonies to me, which do have national significance in China. So I did a little bit of research because I wasn't sure exactly what they represent. But according to ChinaHighlights.com, they are meant to represent feminine beauty, innocence, affection, and charm. Also, I guess, wealth? I've always loved the flowers. My mom was a big fan, so we grew up with them in the garden. It always meant that the weather was warming up when the peonies started blooming, which was an exciting time because I grew up in Alaska where it is freezing cold for a lot of the year. I also remember going to the Chinese New Year celebrations in my city every winter. I was actually adopted from China, and my parents are Irish and Scandinavian, so they weren't entirely familiar with Chinese culture, but I do really appreciate that they tried. We did a lot of different local Chinese events. I mentioned before, like the cultural camp that they held every summer, and then they also just did performances every holiday, and so that was really cool. And I missed the Chinese bakery that was right by my school. It had the best Chinese food. But back to the nails, I'm just finishing up with some caviar beads and some pearls, affixing everything with that ivy gel and flash curing it before giving the whole set a full cure. Now that all of the 3D elements are in place, I'm going back in to add some hand-painted details, just some symbols that are related to Chinese New Year and Chinese culture. So on the thumbnail here, I'll be honest, I just looked up an ornamental round Chinese symbol, and that's what I am painting in. I always worry about doing this stuff because I don't know if you've seen people who get like the Chinese character tattoos where they think it means one thing and then it means something else entirely random, or maybe like a shirt with Chinese lettering on it that says, you know, something stupid and mundane. But this symbol here is actually a simplified Chinese symbol for Fu. I am definitely butchering that, but it means blessings or good fortune, and it's often the symbol found on the little red envelopes. I used to get the little red envelopes for Chinese New Year, and my family used to actually give them out too, like at school when I was younger. I gave one to my kindergarten teacher, and then I reconnected with her probably 5 years ago when I was doing some research for my teacher certification. And it was so sweet. She told me she still had it after like 15 years, which was crazy to me, but also really inspiring as a teacher to build those kind of connections with your students. Anyways, back to the nails. I am outlining some of that bamboo just so that you can differentiate between the different shoots. I just felt a little bit busy with all of the green and like you couldn't really tell where something started and something ended. Overall, I do think this was a good decision. It just helps separate those shapes a little bit better. And then I wanted to carry the red into this nail as well, just for cohesion of the overall design. Honestly, I did look up a symbol, but I don't even remember what symbol this is. Oh, wait. I think it actually might be snake. Yes, I did just look it up, and it is Mandarin for snake, although with it being so tiny, I don't think I did it justice at all. And I'll be honest, at this point, I was kind of over the hand painting. I was really running out of time. I did not finish the set until yesterday, Saturday, and I still had the whole video to edit and voice over and everything. So I'll admit, I went in and I started doing the equivalent of scribbling, but in Chinese. So I was just making like the general shapes of various characters that I am familiar with, and just doing, again, like the equivalent of just scribbling to look like handwriting. So yeah, was not trying to be accurate at all here, just wanted to get across like the concept of writing without having to spend too much time writing actual characters out. And now we are ready for top coat, so I'm using the Yogo Zombie top. It is a very thick viscosity top coat, which I actually wanted for this one since I knew I had so many charms and 3D elements. So I am just going over everything, making sure to use a nice and thick layer to really seal in those charms. Painting over that quartz disc, that jade disc, was so satisfying because you could just see all of the shine come to life. Top coating is definitely one of my favorite parts of the process because it just brings all of that hand-painted artwork to the surface. It can add contrast, and it's just such a satisfying process. For the ring finger, I'm painting all over the surface of the nail, making sure I get really close under that fan to where the connection point is, sealing in that glue. I do flash cure all of this into place before going in with more top gel in between those little gaps that you can see in the fan itself. I do bring that gel over those little thin metal parts you see there, just so that there's some gel on top of the charm and it won't budge when you're wearing it. With a charm like this that is so big and bulky, it can easily come off. I would not recommend these for everyday wear, but rather maybe like a special event. Having gel over parts of the charm though will just ensure that it does not come off. And then I'm just top coating the snake nail, going over the pearls. I do recommend that you top coat your pearls. I've noticed personally that the ones that I get at least do tend to lose their pearlescent sheen if you don't top coat over them. And then for the snake itself, I'm actually using the Mayo glass top. It's that thinner consistency top gel, just to go over those details so I'm not adding too much bulk. I already think the snake is actually a little bit thicker than I wanted initially, but that is a lesson learned for next time. And I am finishing off with a nice healthy top coat on that pinky finger. With these hand painted nails, I do like using a thicker top coat so I can build just a little bit of structure if there are any like bumps and lumps from doing the hand painted details and layers. And then I thought I had this great idea of using like a petal brush, something like this leaf cute one here from Dayami, to do some hand painted flower petals in a texture gel. I did try this with the Divock white texture gel and it just was not opaque enough for the effect I wanted. So I'm going in here with that D-Gel white liner gel and just adding some flowers onto the very barren branches that were on the pointer finger. I do wish the texture had worked. I could probably mix this one with a little bit of like acrylic powder to get an opaque textured finishing gel, but I was just very quickly running out of time, needed to get this set done, so I just went with the standard gel. Overall, I think the look still is very nice. I didn't want to top coat over this because I did want that texture, so I just wiped it down really well with some isopropyl alcohol. And that is actually the finished design. Let me know what you think of it down in the comments below. I'm super proud of how it turned out. I think it's actually one of the more accurate kind of like design inspo to finished products that I've had. Most of the time I end up deviating from the original design that I draw out, but this one I think actually worked out pretty well. I almost feel like it didn't need the magnetic gel though. I could have gone with just that jade green base on all of the nails, but let me know if you like the magnetic gel. I really appreciate everyone being here and watching. All of the products I used are linked below along with discount codes if you would like to recreate this set. I'd love to see how yours turn out. But thank you so much again for being here. I do have other tutorials on my channel if you would like to check those out, along with hauls and reviews. All that being said, I hope you are having a wonderful year so far, a wonderful day, and I will see you all for the next set. Bye!